Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 55.
You being a great listener will help you become someone who does the work better. And not just any kind of listening. We're talking about active listening, right? And active listening requires a certain amount of empathy, but it's the kind of active listening requires to listen to understand, not just listen to respond.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Pages Matam. Pages is an international recognized award-winning poet, writer, and performer. He's a two-time National Slam champion and Southern Fried champion. He was recently made a Callaloo Fellow. Am I saying that right, too?
Yes,
Callaloo Fellow. Creative writing and performance educator, curator, and artistic director of Beltway Poetry Slam. The author of The Heart of the Comet, which is Right Bloody 2014, which won Best Book in 2014 from Beltway Poetry Quarterly. He's a bow tie enthusiast, so he always looks amazing. Gummy bear, elitist, anime fanatic, and professional hugger. So welcome. He's so highly decorated. Welcome, Pages.
Hello.
Do you want to tell us more about some of the awards that you've received in poetry?
Oh, wow. A lot of them. But, I mean, at least, some of the ones that I've come to like. I mean, there is a large events around Poetry Slam, which is a competitive poetry. And there are a couple of festivals that are centered around Poetry Slam that happen throughout the country and parts of the world as well. So I was the 2014 National Poetry Slam champion with the Beltway Slam team. Also, I was the coach, one of the coaches for the Youth Poetry Slam team out of D.C. that won Brave New Voices. I was, Southern Fried champion with Team Treat Yourself in 2013. I recently, became a Callaloo Fellow. I received, the Beltway Poetry Award for my newest collection of poetry called The Heart of a Comet, which is available via Right Blood. Go ahead and get that. Just getting that out there now.
You might as well.
And, might as well, just get that out there. That's some of the more recent stuff.
That's awesome. So before we get more into, how you got into slam poetry and stuff, do you want to kind of give us a little bit of background information just about yourself, like your family and your hobbies, stuff like that, more personal stuff?
So I am originally from Cameroon, Central Africa. That's where I was born and raised between there and certain parts of Europe before I came over here to Washington, D.C. First arriving, came to Northeast D.C. and then moved around different parts of Maryland. And then I just recently moved back to D.C. As in living there anyway. I always worked in D.C. or did a lot of performances and events in D.C. But so that's that. I am one of 4 biological children from my mother. I'm the last, and then there were 2 more after us who were adopted. So 6 altogether. And I as was said earlier in the bio, I am a bow tie enthusiast. I love bow ties. I collect bow ties. I make my own bow ties. I am a gummy bear elitist. I love gummy bears. I eat almost a pack of gummy bears a day.
I have to tell you,
an Excel.
They're my favorite too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an Excel spreadsheet that me and a great friend of mine and colleague, Sarah Lawson, that we made together of every brand of gummy bears we would ever eat, and we would grade them according to consistency, flavor, pricing, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's a thing. I love anime. I love cartoons. I watch a lot of them a lot. I'm a bit of a nerd, so comic books and and all that, the whole nine. That is a thing for me. And then I'm a professional hugger. That's the thing. I think hugs are awesome, and I think you should always hug people like you mean it. If you don't mean to, then don't hug them.
Kind of like shaking the hand. You don't want the fish handshake there.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Awesome. So how did you find that you had a talent for slam poetry?
Honestly, slam poetry is a thing that finds you. It's not I mean, you could develop it and all that, but I don't think it's necessarily, an innate talent, because slam poetry, well, just to get that out the way first, slam poetry is not a form, right? So a lot of people get that, confused and think that slam is a form of poetry, which it is not. Slam is just the name of the competition. It's just the name of the event. The form will be spoken word, which is a type of performative poetry, which is, exactly like what it says. You're speaking the word. But in speaking the word, it may ask of you to evoke more feelings and more use of the body and the voice together in a manner that conveys the story or the images or the things that you're trying to say, right? So
it's
yeah,
just a little more animated than like your typical just poetry reading, right?
You're right, very, very much more like yeah, very, very, very much more feeling, more emotionality, more use of the body and the voice, in different manners. It almost seems a little bit more theatrical in some aspects. There's a lot more movement as well, but it's a great balance of both, right? A great poem, no matter how well performed, it still does require some kind of great writing as well, right? If you don't have the poem written, then you can't get the good performance,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's important to have that balance. I think what marks a great spoken word or performance poet is in that. And I know I've seen so much of the flack, right, that the literary world, the people from the literary world look down on people from the slam poetry world because apparently we're too focused on performance and entertaining and being on stage and the lights and not really giving attention to the craft and writing, which is absolutely not true. And in the same way that a lot of, spoken word and performance poets might look down on, literary poets because of the way that they look at us. But also I was thinking, well, you're kind of like the way you read is not really well accepted or boring, right? Because you're not using all of these other elements to uplift the poem into a different place, And I'm not saying that every poem requires you to be all super performative. Every poem doesn't require that. But, there are different ways to be still engaging with an audience, and that's something that, some people can do very well and some people not so well. So as far as me, honestly, I got into poetry. I have a theater background, right? I started out doing theater stuff. So I was always into using my body and movement and the voice and finding all the ways to make that work. But I think, though, what got me into poetry itself was an episode of Power Rangers. I was watching an episode of Power Rangers and in it, one of the Rangers, I believe the Yellow Ranger, it was an episode where they were all sent back into different parts of time. And I think she ended up in like 16th century France or something like that. And she met this guy who was a poet and this French guy who was a poet. And he wrote her a poem and she fell in love with him. And she wanted to stay in that time with him. And to me, having my, Cameroonian background, and it was kind of like, oh my gosh, you can put words together and girls fall in love with you. That's what I need to do with my life. So, and that's kind of how that sparked. I wrote my first poem to this girl I had a crush on in middle school. Didn't work out, but it's all good. I kept writing. I would show my work to some of my professors and teachers. And then when I got in high school, I joined a wonderful group by the name of Lyrical Storm, which is a youth performance group, a youth performance arts group based out of Maryland, respectively out of Parkdale High School, which is the high school that I went to. So my freshman year, they did an assembly. They had an assembly where a couple of the members from the group performed, and that's when I first saw spoken word. It was at that assembly, my freshman year of high school. And I was just blown away. I was like, what is this thing? Like, people aren't just reading, right? Because I was so used, because that's what I would hear. I thought, there's a difference in you just have a poem and then you just get up and you read it, right? Like, I thought that's what it was.
Kind of boring.
And I saw them and they were kind of boring. And then, like, they were using their bodies and inflections in their voice and making faces and engaging the audience and, like, walking through the aisles at some points and, like, being just, energetic and full of vibrations. And then they will know when to be quiet. They will know when to be loud. They will know when to be, in your face. They will know when to pull it back and kind of pull you in. It was just so powerful. I was just like, I've never seen this before. Where did these things happen? And so I joined the poetry group at my high school. And then the director of that group, Mr. Neville Adams, who's also a professor at Parkdale, IB professor at Parkdale, he became my mentor. So he started, he was like, I know you're used to reading the Shakespeare's and all that. That's the stuff that they show you in the curriculums. Let me give you some of these other books. Let me give you this Audre Lorde. Let me give you this, there's Nikki Giovanni's, and let me give you these Octavia Butlers and all of these other books. in Lawrence Dunbar's and different poets, contemporary, poets, and those especially that you wouldn't see so much of, in the textbooks and in what, schools would teach you about poetry, which unfortunately a lot of it is just old white men, right? You either get Shakespeare or you get old white men that, you can't relate to, that you don't have the story of. But when I see stories by people like, Langston and people like, Audre Lorde and other poets, that I think have the same thing as me or look like me, and even African poets and things of that sort. So it was just like, wow. So when that happened, he would also, along with some other friends, we would go to local open mics throughout the D.C., Maryland area. And then we would get involved in poetry slams. And most of the slams I knew, it was really with adults, right? So I started slamming with adults first and getting my butt whooped all the time, right? They're like, oh, bless your heart. You know what I'm saying? They would look at me like that. It's like, oh, look at the little baby. Bless your heart. You coming up here being cute, But it kind of fueled me. I've always been a person that welcomed challenges. So it just fueled me to just become better. And it's like, I'm going to become better and learn and do more and keep going to open mics to learn. And then I would watch, Def Poetry Jam when it came on HBO and on YouTube all day, every day. I would be posted up for hours watching episodes of that. Yeah. And then eventually I heard about Brave New Voices. And that's the first time I was introduced to Poetry Slam in terms of the actual competition in the way that it's nationally recognized. So according to like the scores and the timekeeping and all of the things that involve slam, right? So slam, typically there's a time limit of 3 minutes. So you have 3 minutes to come up and say your poem. And then after that, if you get past the time limit, then a point deduction starts happening for every 10 seconds that you go over.
Wow,
right?
They're serious.
Yeah, it's serious. And it's Olympic style. So there's 5 judges that are picked out randomly from the audience. The lowest and the highest scores get dropped. The 3 middle scores get added. And that's how you get your total score for a poetry slam. So that total score you could get is a 30. It's a perfect 30, right?
Wow.
There's no use of props, no use of costumes, no use of musical accompaniment. Yeah, and then you get up and it's just you. It's just you and a microphone, the stage, and the audience. And, so that was Brave New Voices, which uses that similar structure, was the first time that I was introduced to slam competition in terms of what's recognized as poetry slam throughout the country and parts of the world, right? And I grew from Brave New Voices, and from Brave New Voices then I learned about the National Poetry Slam and other slams that use these kind of same rules both locally. Busboys and Poets, when they did the 11th Hour Slam, that's what I would go to. The first adult team that I was on was the Busboys and Poets Slam 11th Hour Slam team. And then I moved on to the Beltway Poetry Slam team. And then, and that's kind of it. I always knew that I had a want and feel for the audience since, I started out in theater. My mom had me in plays as a kid. So I always liked, that element of theater and becoming a different person or a character and being able to channel the stories and energy of that character onto a stage and make people feel something. So that's always been a part of me. And that's kind of like my slam history up until now in a short way.
You call yourself a performer, but you also say you're an educator and an activist. How do you bring those into your poetry, to educate and an activist?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether it's, using poems, whether my own or other poets that I know, either contemporary or some poets or other literary poets, use poems as points of educating in terms of like about issues, social justice issues and other events that are going on around the world. And how can I teach, a student about metaphors, for example, by using a Shakespeare poem and a Tupac poem in the same space? How can I, show them a Gwendolyn Brooks poem and a poem by Dominique Christina, who's a Woman of the World Poetry Slam champion and a fantastic slam poet and other performance poet? How can I show Gwendolyn Brooks and Dominique Christina in the same space and to teach about the use of voice or the use of figurative language, right? Those are the educational points. And then, how you use poetry, to actually as a tool to teach, elements of language, but also to teach how to be able to speak in front of an audience, right? When you perform, right? How to use your words and how to gain confidence and how to be able to stand in front of people and convey a message effectively and succinctly. you know?
Yeah.
So that's the educational part. And the social justice part, I feel, especially, we just had a great meeting with a couple of poets, and where one poet said, at a panel that we did for AWP, which is the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, it's a huge conference, 13,000 writers get together. And I was on a panel with Dinesh Smith, Ross Gay, and Tim Siebels. And it was a beautiful intergenerational panel about poetry and new black masculinity. And Dinesh Smith said that poetry, the revolution is coming, and poetry and poets are going to provide the music for it, right? And I ardently believe that poetry, especially performance poetry and what it's been, has been such a great tool for social justice issues, right? That I can write a poem about a theme such as sexual assault or poverty or politics or cultural identity, and have different kind of elements and themes, social issues, and either on a solution-based level or on a asking questions or creating dialogue, which is what this is about, right? And I think that's the biggest thing about an issue. You don't know if an issue is there if people aren't talking about them, or if people are being silent about them. And poetry, spoken word, performance poetry, is a way that we combat the silence. It's a way that we create dialogue, right? That you might be less likely to want to have a conversation with me in any random place, but here's a designated space where I have 3 minutes to get on stage and say pretty much whatever I want.
Yeah.
Right. To use that space, use that time, that 3 minutes, to convey a powerful message to you. I mean, I know plenty of people, including myself, that have been affected by some of the work that us poets have been doing. That I'm able to go up there and do a piece about sexual assault and rape culture and how horrible it is, and the culture of silence, and that people are affected by that and say that, and come up to you later and said, your poem has transformed me in the way that I think about these issues, or your poem has transformed me and given me a voice, and I want to speak out on my own trauma that I went through and want to heal. These things happen, and it's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And I think that's, such a powerful way to create an environment of social justice, and whether it's through our own stories or how we witness the stories of others, because the political is personal and the personal is political, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, it goes both ways, and how that works in tandem, and poetry, spoken word, especially as of late with the popularity that's been getting, especially with poems that speak on issues that get on major forums such as Upworthy or Huffington Post and things of that sorts, and that gets seen by millions of people. Technology has also, made these possible.
Changed it. Yeah,
it's changed so much.
I was pretty surprised how, just watching some of your performances on YouTube, how moving they are. I mean, they are really powerful, like you said. I mean, they catch your attention and make you listen. You talked about, definitely you've taken on the field of education, and then we talked a little bit about violence and abuse and some of your trauma work. How are you a youth advocate too? You talked. I've seen that on your website that you help with youth advocacy.
Yeah, I do a lot of work. Most of my work that I do, even in the social justice work that I do, is with youth. So my creative writing and performance and theater work, curriculum and classes, is mainly with youth, working with high school youth, and a lot of the work, because I believe that's where the revolution will start. Honestly, it's from the young people.
Yeah.
We can't really reach the older generation anymore. Or not that we can't, is that they're harder to reach, right? They've already had 50, 60 plus years of their mentality and the things that they've gone through and the experiences that they've had. The revolution is now being led by the young people. When we look at events such as Ferguson, for example, that's led by young Black queer women, right? Age 17 to 25, 26. They're the ones leading these movements that have been happening in Ferguson and everything else. And so those are the people that we definitely need to reach. I'm looking at the high schoolers, the middle schoolers, the elementary school students. If we can start planting the seeds with them in the way that we reach them and we support them, in the way that we provide them community and safe spaces where they can come and be themselves and be wholeheartedly themselves, and know that they're being listened to, right? Because that's what happens with that. I think the biggest thing about youth advocacy is that a lot of the young people don't feel heard. They don't feel listened to. They don't feel like they have a voice, which is great when we have platforms such as Brave New Voices, where kids can use talent, can use their voices and their talent in writing and performance to speak on the issues that they face, or the things that they see and witness, and the things that affect them. But when we can provide other spaces, as well, and other events and forums for them to be able to be heard, and then provide them the tools for them to create active solutions and work through them, I think that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm definitely a supporter of child-led, curriculums and stuff. I think too many times we tell kids what they need to be learning versus what really focusing on how we can help them become more, every one of us us has a talent or some sort of passion that's just planted in us, from birth, basically, and how we can foster those seeds versus just like, well, you should do this and, you should be studying this and that. So definitely behind you on that. Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors.
Hey, Firestarters, this is Mark, producer of The Luminous Mind. If you're like me, the thought of going out to the store and shopping is enough to make you want to crawl in a hole and hide. If that's you, then do your shopping online through Amazon. Just go to theluminousmind.net, click on the Amazon link, and shop away. Also, most of the books and resources that Rebecca and her guests discuss can be found on our Amazon links as well. Again, if you're like me, you have already accidentally signed up for Amazon Prime. So most of those purchases should have free shipping as well. Good luck!
Gnawing away at decaying matter. Can you feel the chomp at all that feeds you? Creeping, crawling alchemists. Transforming death into nutrients. Harmoniously fueling all of us. That stand swaying in this musical forest. It's black, cold, and claustrophobic underground. The warmth of the sun, only a falling memory. In this dark night.
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with slam poet, advocate, and teacher, Pages Matam. What was some of the best advice that you've received in all of your training and making your curriculum?
Honestly, some of the best advice I've received is learn how to listen, right? Learn how to listen. You being a great listener will help you become someone who does the work better. And not just any kind of listening. We're talking about active listening, right? And active listening requires a certain amount of empathy, but it's the kind of active listening requires to listen to understand, not just listen to respond.
Yeah,
right? Because if you're
exactly.
listening to understand something, it forces you, it implores of you to have some kind of empathy, right? With that we're doing, right? You need to be empathetic to the different stories and the people that you meet every day, and know that even if you don't necessarily come from that, what can you do from your end, and how can you, truly make yourself open enough to understand this, to understand where they're coming from, or provide them a space for them to be listened to if you're not the person that can understand them, and maybe someone else out there can, and provide the help that you can't, right? So active listening, that probably was the best advice that I ever got in learning how to become a better listener in everything that I do.
Well, and when you're talking about revolution, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from with that, being more empathetic to what's going on around us versus, is that kind of where you're coming from with the revolution that you're talking about?
Absolutely. I think, when we are living in a world that is mostly constituted in apathy, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That is a major problem. And that's something that we want to try and avoid having to deal with. But the only way that people would want to even try to have active listening and understand where you're coming from and support you is they have to be empathetic. We can't have, the revolution in any sort of ways, revolution and change, which are synonymous, I believe. Revolution and change, those words can be used interchangeably, right? But to have that, it starts within, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the revolution within yourself, right? And which means changing your mentality, changing the way you think, changing the way you approach things, changing the way you look at things, perspectives, and being open to different perspectives. We don't necessarily have to always agree, right, completely, but we are agreeing to always say that there's room and space for everyone here.
Well,
right?
and if your paradigm's opened up, everyone's allowed to take the direction that they choose, but if your paradigm is open, then you're not going to think or force somebody to take that same direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, that's what we're all here. We are here to change paradigms. Perfect.
Absolutely. Very, very crucial paradigm shifts are happening, and it's being led by young people.
Yeah.
It's being led by by young people, doing fantastic, work and utilizing all of the tools that are available to them now and planting the seeds for the children of tomorrow. And it's beautiful to see.
That's awesome. So what are some of the biggest obstacles that you face, and what did you learn from those struggles that you had?
Learning that, people will not always be on the same page with you, that sometimes you can't reach everyone, that some people will not make it. And that's a hard thing to do, right? Especially for me. I love to help people. And so it really, really moves something in me when I'm in a position where I feel that I can't be helpful in any way. And some people can't be helped. Some people don't want to be helped. And then some people, aren't able to work at the same pace that you are. A lot of people will say they'll be down for the movement, but then they'll have their own separate agendas that will often impede the actual movement. That will be an impediment for the actual movement. So are people that will have their own kind of pseudoscience and thinking about the way to go about it and move about things, or you have people that want to co-opt, movement and use it for, their own whatever, thing that they want to put together. And so, those are some of the biggest obstacles that I've come to face in terms of, in a general perspective of working in this kind of work. Now, personally, I think mostly just knowing how to get the message right. Sometimes you get in spaces where, it's not the right poem, you don't get the right words, you don't perform it right, and it doesn't hit as well, and, you go back and forth within yourself with that. And so that has happened, at times. And personal, struggles I've had, I struggled with alcohol for some time and some other, addictions and things that spawned from my trauma as a child, being a survivor myself from sexual abuse as a child. And elements of that, have given me some obstacles in some aspects of my life, and poetry has provided me a healing space, one of my healing spaces, and I've been very, very grateful for that.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Wow. Great. So now you do have a curriculum. I saw that on your page, and then you talked a little bit about that, but what's the inspiration behind your curriculum? And who are you trying to target with that?
I believe in the people that I work with in reciprocal education, right? That the teacher is just as much the student, is just as much a student as the students, are the teachers, right? That This is a space where we are all learning, right, at all times.
Well,
right?
that's where that empathetic listening, the active listening that you talked about comes into play, right? That
absolutely.
You're not just up there preaching a lecture or whatever to kids.
Absolutely. And with that, the curriculum then uses, elements of creative writing and performance, and using the body and the voice in tandem, the body, the voice, and the writing, the honest writing and the soul and the heart of a person. How all of these things is how you learn. You don't just learn things by reading about them. You learn things about, by experiencing them as well, right? You can read something and then go learn about it and find out where it is and then experience it. These are different, there, right there, that's 4 different layers of a learning experience, of an education that you just had.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the kind of thing that I look into in these curriculums, and something that uses poetry, uses creative writing and performance as a platform for healing and activism. So a curriculum that uses these artistic elements, as a way of people finding themselves, healing themselves, and being able to empower them to go potentially continue this work in healing and helping others and supporting others.
Yeah.
Right. Which is where that's the main part of activism. It's about, creating support systems and helping each other drive the change that we need to see. And that change, how it starts within before it spreads, all the way out.
Yeah. You can't be a positive light in somebody else's life until you clean up your own own stuff inside. So I really thought your YouTube video was awesome too. Do you have any other types of videos like that kind of teach kids how to kind of find that creative gene inside of themselves?
There are. I don't have any personally, but there are many available. There are so many sources available for YouTube. I know I only have 2 for myself with TEDx that I did with Gail Danley on using slam poetry, how to write a slam poem, and then the secondary one that you saw. But there are many things available, and there are many different programs and resources that are out there that also do this similar work. And
that's awesome. What other services do you offer, students or teachers, both?
Yes. Most of it is, we particularly is kind of as a teaching artist, right? So you go in, you do work with the students. It might be residencies, it might be a one-time workshop, and it can be on creative writing and performance and slam poetry. You also can help them organize or coordinate events, typically like a poetry slam at their school or for their conference or things of that sort, where the students, after a certain amount of workout times, get to showcase, the poetry that they've been working on. Yeah, we've also done professional developments for teachers and helping them either in organizations and helping how do you implement these kind of programs, these creative writing after school, mainly after school, but sometimes in school programs, into your schools. And how can you be effective with them in reaching students as a means to reaching more students, right? Don't just go the traditional and boring way. Use something that excites them, right? I've gotten so many teachers that come to me after I do a session at their school or with their students, and they just tell me, wow, like I've had these students for a semester or more, and I've never been able to reach them in a way that you have in the past 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, and you show, though, that it's fun and it's entertaining. I mean, sometimes when we're trying to teach, we just leave out all the entertainment and the fun behind it, So, yeah, it is boring. So you've talked about that. What other successes have you seen with your curriculum and teaching style?
We've seen the way students just gravitate to the work and learn from the work and become confident. And people, I've had students, with the people that we work with and the organization that I worked with, Split This Rock, which is where I did most of this work with schools. We've seen, students that never wrote a poem before. The quiet students that were in the back of the classroom that would never raise their hands, but be able to come through our programs and learn and become better writers, better readers, and just better people, right? We're not in the business of creating the best performers and talented people. We're not in that business. We're in the business of helping. Well, not business. I don't even want to say it like that because there's no, like, it's not necessarily a give and take thing. But we're in a work, in a project of helping people become the best person that they can possibly be, right?
Yeah.
But using talent, using art as a vehicle for that.
That is
right.
Awesome.
I'm not, I want you to be, if you have a kid that wants to be a neuroscientist and do hip hop, why can't you do that? Be the first hip hop neuroscientist. Do it.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? If you want to be a lawyer and a vocalist, why not you do that? Go ahead, do that. Be a lawyer, and be a singer on your other time. Like, do that. We want to be able to show students that there are many pathways, not just the ones that they're traditionally been told that they can only have because they're taught to be robots and taught to be workers under a capitalistic mindset, under you are a business. You are meant to be someone that can be used for someone else versus
when we forget
learning for yourself.
Yeah, we forget people are multifaceted, that we just don't have one side, that we have a lot of different passions and it can take us a lot of different places. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
You have different passions and you have people from all walks of life, not just on race, but on gender and even non-gender. And you're talking, people that come from all these different kind of backgrounds and different languages and different experiences and some that are handicapped and not handicapped and some that have access and all these things. And it's all about that, right? It's about how do we create more access? How do we empower people and tell them that and show them that they have access or that they can create that access, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it that I've seen. I've seen students that went on that were not doing so well in school while they were in high school and stuff like that, and go be and then graduate being top of their class in the top 10%, 5 percentile of their class, and then end up going to Ivy League schools. We have students of ours that through our programs were not doing so well at first, but then through our programs excelled and end up going to Princeton, end up going to other major Ivy League schools and things of that sort. It's like that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then be able to continue their work themselves in wherever spaces they're at because we've empowered them and given them those tools. And then, and continue that work, continue that reciprocal energy, continue that reciprocal education throughout, right? That education doesn't just happen in a classroom, right?
Yeah.
That it happens at home. It happens on your way to work. It happens on your way from work. It happens when you're with friends, with family. Like, there's always an educational moment at all times.
Yeah, kind of organic learning. You're always picking up something. And I love how it sounds like you finally just awaken their desire to learn and understand that it's multifaceted and that they can learn from every which direction. That's so great. So do you have any long-term goals for yourself, and what kind of legacy do you hope to leave?
I hope, actually, my biggest hope is to open a school. I would love to open my own school. A kind of, if you've ever watched or read the X comics, kind of Charles Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters, which is like the mutant school that all the superpowered beings will go to. But I want to create a school like that, but where your superpower is your imagination, is your creative art, is your talent, right? That you can learn biology, history, politics, and all the major, courses or whatever, and everything else in between in a fun, entertaining, artistic way.
Yeah, where it takes
right?
on life, like a life to it.
Where it takes on, absolutely, because that's how, that was the main thing my mother taught me growing up, that she was saying, your imagination is what's going to take you far. How do you, create things that have never been there before? And the way that she wanted to exercise my imagination is to be as creative as possible. Take piano lessons, and if also you have, awarded that, that privilege, right? I do want to say that this is not a thing that's accessible to everyone for whatever reason. Some people don't have the money. Some people don't have, the people that would support them. I'm so blessed and privileged to be able to have a support system throughout my life where I was able to go do these things, right? And this is not something that's available to everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but if you are able to do that, do it. Having, introducing children and young people and even adults to different experiences, to different cultures and things that they can learn from and pull from and create their own identity and create their own kind of passion and things. So I want to open a school that caters to that. I want a school that uses, it's a performance art school, but, you definitely learn. It's a performance arts and social justice based school. That's what I want, where imagination is your superpower and you learn everything in a creative and artistic way, where the teachers get to create their own curriculums. They will have a baseline foundation curriculum of things that we will want for them to cover. They will add on to it and layer it according to their own thing and how they see fit, in a way that still leaves space for students themselves to be able to learn in a way that they want to, right? I want to be able to be like, kids, what do you want to learn? What is a class that you would like to do? If a student comes up to me and says, I want a class that only teaches about the dynamics of chairs. I want to learn about the dynamics of chairs. I want to create a dynamics of chairs class. And if this student can write or compel me in a way that, can give me a, some type of thesis or something that says why this class is important, then I will do everything that I need to do to make that class possible. And I want that to be like that. I want the education to that organic, kind of learning to constantly be there. And that's what I hope to create with this school. And the other aspect of it is to be like a traveling teaching, doing residencies, not just in the country or locally, but also outside of the country.
Yeah, I'd love to get you in Idaho.
And do this kind of work, in different countries throughout the world, and create different hubs of schools or
awesome.
different hubs of programs where, when the students graduate from those programs, then we have the full year or the final portion of the program will be an exchange student program where the kids from that country or that other place will go to our main school in the U.S., and then the kids from the U.S. will then go to that country or to wherever that place and do some type of exchange learning.
That would be great.
So that's my big goal. That's the kind of legacy I would like to leave of people, knowing that there was always a space for them. Because I know there have been many times in my life where I felt like there wasn't a space for me, and so I had to create one.
Oh, that's great.
And I want that, and I want everyone that comes through my school or my system or my programs or my workshops now to be able to know that, hey, you can do this too. You can probably do it even better, right? There are probably things that that I've never hit up on that I don't know about. I want you to be able to create the space and fight for your identity, fight for your right to have space, to have a voice. That's the kind of legacy that I want to leave.
That is great. So, Pages, before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words of advice or encouragement for our audience? And then please give us your contact information, how we can get in touch with you.
Most definitely. Just be honest. Be honest. Tell your truth. Speak your truth. That is extremely important. And again, be an active listener. Empathy in the work and all the work that you do and the way that you approach people and interact with people and interact with things around in this world. Other than that, you can find me. I am Pages Matam, PagesMatam. My website is pagesmatam.com, www.pagesmatam.com. I am on Twitter and Instagram, PagesOFLE. So Pages of LE. You can find me there. Social media, I'm on Facebook as well, facebook.com/pages.matam. You can find my calendar, my list of events, things that I'm doing. You can come find me at Beltway Poetry Slam, where every last Tuesday of the month we're at Busboys and Poets Brookland. I'm also host and curator of the second Tuesday open mic at Busboys and Poets 14th and V. So I'm there second Tuesdays. You can also find me there at Busboys and Poets, 9 p.m. Check out the DCU Slam team and Split This Rock. You can find their information at splitthisrock.org. They're a fantastic organization that's about their intersection of poetry and social justice and activism and how they use that to speak on issues. They're great. Where else? Yeah, I'm all over the place. So just find me throughout one of those mediums and we can work it out.
That is great. Well, thanks so much for coming and talking to me today. It has been a huge privilege to talk to you, so appreciate that.
Beautiful. No, thank
Great.
you. Thank you for having me. It's been a blessing.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Pages Matam, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Also, be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list so you can receive notifications for our weekly audio blog, The Spark. We would love to have you join our program. Do so by going to the scheduling tab and become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website, theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+. Get our audio content on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.